A week before his inauguration, and Donald Trump is at war again with the mainstream media and with America's top spies. Today, he compared them to Nazi Germany. And yet, he says he now agrees with them that Russia was behind the hack attacks designed to influence the election he won. I'm Brent Goff, and this is The Day. This was the U.S. President-elect's first news conference in 6 months.
Don't be rude.
Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude. No, I'm not going to give you a question. I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you stay categorically?
You are fake news. Information that was false and fake and never happened got released to the public. As far as BuzzFeed, which is a failing pile of garbage, writing it, I think they're going to suffer the consequences. As far as hacking, I think it was Russia. But I think we also get hacked by other countries and other people. Russia will have much greater respect for our country when I'm leading it than when other people have led it. I hope at the end of 8 years I'll come back and I'll say, oh, you did a good job. Otherwise, if they do a bad job, I'll say, you're fired.
Also on the show tonight, a promise he could not keep. U.S. President Barack Obama leaving the White House next week, and the detention center at Guantanamo remains in operation. Will closing it down be a job for President Trump? I'll ask a former detainee what he thinks. That's coming up later in the show. We begin the day with spies who didn't love me, the journalists I love to hate, and the public that doesn't care. Now, those are the takeaways from U.S. President-elect Trump's press conference today, the first that he's held in 6 months. And it quickly devolved into a spectacle, a bully pulpit, a chance for Trump to vent, to lash out, and still offer no clear answers about what made him angry to begin with. Well, Trump surprised reporters by saying that he now agrees with U.S. intelligence that Russia was behind hacking attacks on the Democrats to influence the outcome of the election that he won. He attacked the mainstream media for using fake news to peddle off a report by U.S. intelligence suggesting that the Russians may have sensitive information that could be used to blackmail Mr. Trump. And when reporters pressed him about releasing his tax returns and those conflicts of interest involving his international business ties, well, about a head-on collision with the Constitution, Trump's response was, only you reporters think about this. The public, he said, doesn't care.
I think it was disgraceful that the intelligence agencies allowed any information that turned out to be so false and fake out. I think it's a disgrace. And I say that. And that's something that Nazi Germany would have done and did do. Well, I'm not releasing the tax returns because, as you know, they're under audit. You know, the only one that cares about my tax returns are the reporters, okay? They're the only ones. But no, I don't think so. I won. I mean, I became president. No, I don't think they care at all.
Well, I'm joined now at the big table by Cord Knipfe. He's a visiting fellow political scientist at the JFK Institute here in Berlin. It's good to have you here at the big table on the day. Let me just start by asking you, what do you make of the press conference that we saw today? I mean, you've done a lot of research into the media and politics. What happened today?
Well, the first significant thing was, I think, that we saw the first press conference in almost 200 days by Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. And that's surprising, probably to most people watching, because you feel like you've been inundated with Donald Trump for the past 200 days. What he likes to do is sidestep this process, not be receptive to questions by the media, by journalists and reporters, or just by those journalists that he favors. And we saw a little bit of that today as well.
But, I mean, it was... A lot of people have been saying on social media that it was probably the most aggressive we have seen Donald Trump towards reporters. I mean, today, he basically shut down a CNN reporter. I mean, is that going to be the new normal moving forward? Is that even sustainable?
Well, I've learned throughout the course of this election to be very careful with predictions that I put out there. But I do feel that this was part of an ongoing trend that we've been witnessing, that Donald Trump is very selective about who he speaks to, and that he is very aggressive towards people that he feels have slighted him in the past.
to say that.
And he said today that BuzzFeed, for example, is going to have to pay for releasing that report. Do you take him by his word?
This is the question. So when Donald Trump, the candidate, says something and he says they're going to have to pay for this. So he said, I think literally that BuzzFeed is a pile of garbage and that they would...
A pile of garbage, yes.
Right. They would suffer the consequences. This sounds very different when it's coming from a president-elect than when it does from, let's say, a celebrity on television. And I think to a degree he still needs to get used to this new role that he's in.
When's he going to get used to it, though? I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate here. I think you're being very charitable here. I mean, this is, we're a week away from inauguration. And, in a week, he's in control of the United States.
Well, okay, let me phrase it this way. I think what we saw today was also a bit of a distraction, and the whole ongoing debate. Remember last week we had the Golden Globe debate, and he attacked various celebrities. Now we have this whole story about Russia emerging, and it certainly distracts from the ongoing hearings before Congress. And while we're talking about all of these things that Donald Trump did or didn't say today, we're not talking about Jeff Sessions or Rick Tillerson.
Well, I'm going to ask you about the hearings in just a moment, but I want to stick with the fact that reporters today repeatedly, or they tried to ask about what was in this report, this intelligence report, these alleged connections between Trump or his campaign team and Moscow. They did not get an answer.
That's correct.
And first of all, I mean, that's incredibly, he's very good at getting around those questions. But shouldn't there also be an outcry from the public, and maybe also from the media, that no questions were answered?
I think that's fair to say. So yes, in this regard, the question would be, what can he answer? And at the moment, these claims about Russia, they are unsubstantiated, as also multiple members of the mainstream, so-called mainstream press have stated. The New York Times and Washington Post refused to publish what BuzzFeed published.
Right.
So as of now, a lot of questions remain open, but this was not all the press conference was on today. The bigger question was about conflicts of interest. And here we did get some answers from the president-elect. And those...
From his attorney, right?
Yeah, from the president-elect, and in sort of a strange maneuver, I thought at least, from his attorney, what the strategy going forward will be. And the answer, it turns out, is that it will not be a completely blind trust, but his sons are going to take over.
Okay, we heard that, and we also heard from the attorney that the president is not bound by the same laws that would apply to other members of Congress, for example, these conflict of interest rules. That's not true, though, is it?
That is factually correct. The same laws do not apply to the president or vice president as would to members of Congress or the administration. They are exempt from certain laws governing conflict of interest. But the spirit of the law here is, of course, that it wouldn't make sense for a president to be subject to these same laws, because basically everything they do might be a potential conflict of interest.
Okay.
So the letter of the law is correct, but the spirit of the law here, I think, remains to be pointed out.
And then also we had the president-elect saying, at the end of the day, only the reporters are concerned about this. The public doesn't care.
Yeah.
That's quite an indictment against the people who voted for him, isn't it?
Well, one of the ongoing questions pertaining to the United States and publics around the world is who the public are, who the public is, if we're seeing maybe a process of fragmentation. And I think to a certain degree that parts of the public probably do not really care. These are probably the diehard Trump supporters who...
the ones who came out this time to vote for him, right?
Right. And we'll see how that develops, of course, in 4 years. However, I think parts of the public are also political scientists like myself, journalists like yourself. And I think he can't speak for us, and I think we do care.
Let's talk about the hearings that are going on today. Let's take a listen to what Senator Jeff Sessions said today regarding his ability to basically to remember his ethics and to be objective when he's trying to uphold the law. Take a listen.
Expressed concern about whether you can approach the Clinton matter impartially in both fact and appearance. How do you plan to address those concerns?
With regard to Secretary Clinton and some of the comments I made, I do believe that that could place my objectivity in question. I've given that thought. I believe the proper thing for me to do would be to recuse myself from any questions involving those kind of investigations that involve Secretary Clinton and that were raised during the campaign.
Now, it sounds like he's saying that he's going to do the right thing.
Well, yeah, according to you, the right thing, yes. Also, I think that's what his words were. Of course, Sessions had the agenda, and that became quite clear throughout the hearing, to appear moderate, to do away with some of the, as he portrayed them, unfair characterizations that he had received. And this would be, I think, part of that strategy in front of Congress.
All right. Well, before we let you go, though, based on what we saw today, the next press conference, do you think we're going to have to wait another 6 months?
We may. And then the question will also be who's in the room and who gets to ask their questions. I think one of the things, moving away from Trump, looking at the press corps today, that I thought was also worrying was the reaction in the room. I would have wished for more collegiality, that when one question gets asked and not answered by one colleague, that others would step in and ask the same question. Instead, we heard, I believe we heard shouting matches.
Well, there was a lot of competition there, right? Yeah, because no one's had any questions answered for a very long time. But yeah, you're right. Maybe that will change as well. Okay. Kurt Knupfe, a visiting fellow with the JFK Institute here in Berlin. Yeah, talking about what we saw today. That was called a press conference.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Reactions to Trump's press conference have been pouring in on social media as well, commenting on Trump's way of addressing journalists. Economist reporter Greg Carlstrom tweeted, D.C. journalists spent weeks fixated on Trump's refusal to hold a presser. He finally did. Nothing learned anyway, and he got some free PR. An Italian journalist tweeted, Trump doesn't take questions from CNN. You're fake news. Journalists at the press conference should stand up and leave. It's unacceptable. An American Twitter user reacted on Trump's statement that only reporters care about his taxes. He wrote, please retweet this if you care whether Trump releases them. And on the same issue, this MSNBC analyst wrote, Trump lawyer just said Rockefeller not subjected to this when he became vice president in 1974. That it's false. He released his taxes. And here's another tweet about Trump's relations to Russia. Trump, does anybody in this room honestly believe that Hillary would be tougher on Putin than me? The room nods vigorously.